cloud. All right, so we have this file to download. And in fact, this file, crime.zip, is actually the data that you will be using for the database project coming up. And so we're going to solve part of that database project here in class. Probably more than any other project, the database project brings together lots of things that we've done in class. And so the stuff that we're dealing with today, manipulating individual files, that's a pretty substantial part of this project. And if you follow what we're doing here today, you'll go like, oh yeah, that is like, not only is it directly applicable, I'm building the solution directly on the files that you'll need for the project. So there'll be some modification you have to do, but you can lift large portions of what we do in class today for that next project. So we'll get that file download and we'll get it extracted. Let's see, I think I've already opened it and extracted it. So yeah, so now I have a folder called crime. And I think that's a fine place. I think the files we need are directly inside of it, so that's good. We'll leave that there. And then I'll go ahead and open up a new workbook. Oh, I closed Excel all the way. I've got a new workbook there. I'm going to save it at the same location that I have saved that folder called crime. It really doesn't matter where I save it, but I'm just going to save it at the same location. So it won't be inside that folder. It'll just be in the same place. And I guess I'm going to call this file dialog. Oops, XLSM file dialog. We are fall of 19. All right, so today we're really looking at manipulating files and folders in the file system and looking at some of the tools that Excel makes available for us on that. So starting with a blank file, or blank workbook, but we do have that set of files to work with. We'll do file, I'm sorry, there we go, insert module. I forget how to insert a module, insert module. All right, so the one that I want to get used to, or what I want to start off with today, is called the file dialog. Turns out that we've already seen how to use a couple of dialog boxes. What are the two functions that we've used so far that are dialog boxes? A box that pops up and lets you have a conversation with the user. A dialogue with the user, what are they? Message box and, well, okay, if there's three, yeah, user form, you're right. So user form, let's do a more sophisticated one, and then the input box. So it turns out that there's another one that's called the file dialog. And it just lets you do some of the normal file operations that are available inside of Excel. The nice thing here is that they're kind of already wired to navigate around and look for files and folders and choose folders and filter which files are visible and so forth. So why don't we go ahead and make a function called getFolderPath. Now, so a function, since a function is going to return a value, I'd like to be able to see, while I'm developing, see what that value is. So I'm going to go ahead and just come to the immediate window and put a question mark and call getFolderPath. Which is just so that I can have a place to execute this. And I want to be able to see the results. I could just execute this one. I mean, I could press F5 and it will execute, but I would like to see what it returns. So I'm going to execute it from my immediate window as I'm testing it. Okay, so the file dialog it's just an object. It's just an object of the Microsoft Excel itself, the application. So first, let's go ahead and declare a variable to hold a reference to the file dialog. So then we'll just call it FD as office.fileDialog. Now, someone tell me, when this statement gets processed, and it doesn't get executed because all the memory gets allocated before lines start executing, but when this line is processed, how much memory is involved? Is it like a tiny little bit, or is it a good amount of memory? I mean, is it for all of the things that the file dialog can do, because it's got properties and methods and such, or is it something less than what I need for the file dialog? let's do another version of what we could do here, because that's just a specific kind of an object. So someone tell me what gets allocated here. Do we remember when I say dim a variable as an object, what's getting allocated? Yeah, it's as every variable, it's a location in memory, and it's going to be more or less depending on what I'm doing with it, right? If I'm making a double precision floating point number, it's going to allocate 8 bytes. Is that right? 8, yeah. I think that might be the biggest numeric type that we have. If I allocate a variant, it's going to allocate 22 bytes just for overhead because it's not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. But how much does this declare? How much does this allocate? And the answer is it allocates just enough to hold a memory address. So it's more or less depending on if you have a 32-bit version of Excel or a 64-bit version of Excel, but it's going to allocate enough memory to hold a memory address. Because all it's going to do is say, oh, listen, you're going to use this variable as a nickname for some object that's already in memory somewhere. That's exactly what I'm doing here. But now what I'm saying is the only kind of object that I'm allowed to connect this onto is a file dialog. But that's not really the reason that I don't use object. The reason I don't use object is because I'd like to be able to say fd dot and see what the properties and methods are for the file dialog. And so when I declare it as that particular type, my editor knows what the possibilities are, and it can help me out. So that's the real reason that I try to declare objects as the object variables as the kind of objects that they're going to actually hold. So what's the key word that I have to use when I'm going to bind an object variable onto an object? Set. So I say set, set fd equal to, now the file dialog is actually a property, it's an object that's a part of Excel itself. And so the object that lets me get to Excel is application. Application dot file dialog. I guess it's actually a method. Oh, it says it's a property. In truth, I think it's a method anyway, but it gives me a little indication here that says it's a property. The reason I think it's a method is because I've got to give it some information here about how to create. So I can tell it, what do you want to pick? A file? Do you want to pick a folder? Do you want this to be an open or a save as kind of file dialog? In this case, since we're getting a folder path, I just want this to be a folder picker. Isn't that a great name? MSO, which stands for Microsoft Office File Dialog Folder Picker. That's it. And so that's going to open, it's going to set the behavior of this file dialog and say, oh, you're only interested in folders. Great. I'm not even going to show you files. You can't pick the files. You want just show you folders. And the folder picker can only pick a single folder. The file picker can pick multiple files, but the folder picker picks a single folder. Okay, so now that I've got that object, I'm ready to show it. I can say fd dot show. That should get us started. Now when I call this, come up to my immediate window and execute the statement that says question mark get folder path, it should show up this file dialog. And it's only showing folders. Users. Oh, look at all these users here. I had no idea. I think I'm here, G. Allen somewhere. A, B, C, D, E, F. G. Allen 2. Go to my downloads. And I've got lots of files in my download folder, but it's only showing folders. So I could select the crime folder and say OK. And that's what it's, and I picked it. Now, we got to ask the question, how can we possibly tell which folder got picked? And it turns out that FD, or the file dialog, has a property called selected items. So let me just go ahead and set the return value of my function, especially since I know that the file dialog can only select, or the folder picker can only select a single folder. I'm going to set my folder path equal to fd dot, and there's actually a collection of called selected items. Selected items. It is one based. And since I know that I can only pick a single one, it's going to be the first item in that element. It's going to be the first element in that collection. So now I should be able to, let's go ahead and set the return value of this. Let's take this as a string. So we'll be returning a string. And I think that should actually now print the folder that I select. So I'll just say OK on the folder that I have selected right now. So that's whatever the path is to my downloads folder. Say OK, and sure enough, it returned that. Not bad. Let me try it again. And now I'm going to have second thoughts. Now I'm just going to cancel. Invalid procedure call or argument. What do you think's going on? We'll hit debug. What's the problem? Yeah, how many items do you think are selected right now? Yeah, we can ask. It's a collection, so what property does it have to have? It has to have a count property. There's none selected. So I'd like to have some way to know, did the user cancel out of this? So I could just check to see if there's nothing selected and then not return anything. But there's a problem with that approach as well. I'll run this. I'll select this one. And then I'll say cancel. Is it still 0? Oh, it sets it to 0. We probably could reliably do that. But there's kind of a more direct way to do it. And that is the show method will return true or false based on whether the person clicked OK or cancel. So if the user clicked OK, this returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. So let's just do it here. If FD show, then set the return value. We'll try it again. We'll select something. We'll cancel. No error. What did it return? What did my function return? It returned an empty string. Why an empty string? Because I never told it what to return, so it will return the default for the data type of the function. And the default for string data type is empty string. Question? Okay, so the question is, why don't we write if fd.show equals true? Because fd.show is going to equal true or false. And so when fd.show equals true, that's when I want to set the return value to the selected items. So this is a perfectly reasonable way to write this. But the reason we don't have to write that is that the rule is that anything that comes before the if and the then has to evaluate to true or false. Well, fd.show itself evaluates to true or false. So it will either be true or it will be false. So by saying, does this equal true, then this whole expression will only be true when this returns true. So that then would become true equals true, which is true, or true equals false, which is false. But putting equals true onto a Boolean expression doesn't ever do anything because this expression itself is either true or false. And that's really an important thing to grasp because so often we think that, and when we're first starting, we think, oh, that has to be like a statement of equality, or it has to be a statement of inequality, right? Something will say, x is greater than 12, then do this. But really what we need to have between the if and the then is just something that evaluates it true or false. So you could go crazy. If fd equals true and true, and 1 equals 1, right? All this stuff still is not going to change. I mean, the only thing that would change here is that if this is true, the whole thing is true. If this is false, the whole thing is false. It's just kind of extraneous syntax. Some folks really prefer to see it this way, and if you want to write it that way, I don't have a problem with that. But I do want you to be comfortable looking at this and going, okay, that's fine as long as this is a Boolean expression. And in fact, if it's a numeric expression, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's okay too. It will automatically convert 0 to false and any other number to true. So it's saying I got a numeric expression here. I got to convert to Boolean. How do I convert numbers to Boolean? If it's 0, it's false. Let's just do it. Cbool 0, false. -1, true. 1, true. 100, true. Any number is true except 0. That's how it converts. But in truth, and some people, they kind of come from more lower level languages. They are absolutely thrilled to just put a numeric expression in here and go, yeah, that's an integer, but great, I know how to process it. But it's kind of the same thing. You're saying you prefer to see equals true there. I prefer to see not equal to 0 or greater than 0 or less than 0 here if it's numeric. But VBA will do the conversion. Okay, so this actually could be now a pretty useful little function. So if we need to say, hey, we need a path to something, you can just give us the path to do it. Okay, question on the folder picker? Seems like there's homework due tonight on this. Is it having you pick a folder or is it having you pick a file? Oh, then I think I probably just did the homework or something very close to it. Was that the whole thing? Maybe I should review the homework before I actually do an example in class. Didn't mean to give you the whole homework. What's that? Oh, you have to actually put the value into a range? I will leave that as an exercise for the interested student. That used to be a really common thing to have in textbooks, like when I was a student. There'd be like some point, it was like the author just didn't want to write about it, you know, and we will leave the working of this problem as an exercise for the interested student. They would just move on. No, never give this solution anywhere or whatever. It's something for you to think about. Yeah, hopefully you see how to make this go into a range pretty easy. Okay, so why don't we then also look at another case, and that's choosing multiple files. So why don't we have another function called get files. So function get files. What's that? Oh, yeah, I'm using camel case here. At some point, I thought I wanted to move more to the underscore notation, everything lowercase. I think I like camel case better for VBA just because the editor will, if I write it in lowercase and I see it pop into camel case, I know I've at least typed it right. Okay, so we're going to have something similar here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my definition here. File dialog will be the same, but now instead of the folder picker, I'm going to want to use the file picker. Okay, now the truth is that we can get multiple files back. We have to decide how do we want to send those back. A function is going to return a single value. So if they choose multiple files, what should we do? One option is to pass those file names back as a comma-separated list. It could be a string that's just comma delimited. Another option would be to actually return a collection. So instead of returning a string, it returns a collection. And then you've got a collection to work with. We could return an array. We could make an array and return the array of those items. Kind of lots of choices that we could do. So that's one thing that we've got to deal with here. But now probably the more interesting thing here is that now I've got maybe lots of different settings as to the way that I want to work with this thing. And so I'm going to configure the file dialog before I open it. And so let's go ahead and let's go ahead and run this. So this is get files. And let's just look at what some of the options are. Oh, I didn't show it. fd.show. Let's go ahead and put the same structure in. If fd.show, then we'll do something, otherwise we won't. All right, so here's one of the things I would like to play with. And this will kind of give you a sense for some of the manipulation that we can do. So this is called the file filter. So right now, this is showing all files, star.star. I would like to say, you know what? I want to only see Excel files, star.xlsm or star.xlsx or xlsb. Those are the, maybe I'd throw in CSV there as well, because you can open up an Excel, a CSV file pretty nice with Excel. Okay, so let's see how we manipulate this. Cancel. So before we show now, I'm going to start to manipulate those filters. First thing I'm going to do, say fd.clear. fd.filters .clear. This should get rid of the default all filter. And now I would like to add in the filter that I want to add. So fd.filters.add. So the description that I put in is what the user is going to see. I'm going to say Excel files. And then maybe in parentheses, I'll also tell them, by the way, I'm defining Excel files as star.xlsx, star.xlsm, and star.xlsb. I don't think we've talked much about the XLSB format. Of all these three, where can you have macros? XLSM and XLSB. XLSB is a binary format. The nice thing about XLSM is that other programs can open, have we seen how to do that? Maybe we haven't seen how to do that in this class yet, but you can actually programmatically open up an Excel file and read through it and make changes to it, even without Excel. It's like some other program could do that. XLSB, no, because it's a binary file and it's not put together in a way that you could readily extract it and work with it. But they are slightly more efficient. They're a little bit faster, a little bit smaller than XLSMs. So some people like to use them. Trouble with an XLSB is that you may very well have a non-macro enabled workbook as an XLSB. So usually if it's an XLSM, you're thinking there's macros in here. That's not necessarily true of XLSB. It doesn't really have to be true of XLSM either, but anyway, you got to be careful of that. So the first argument is just what does the user see? The next argument then is going to be, what do we, it's actually the filter that we're putting on it. Ooh, and this I always forget what it is. So I know it's like star.xlsx, and you put in several ones here as a single argument, but I forget how to do it. Let's just take a quick look. Excel, VBA, file dialog, filter, multiple extensions. It runs in my mind that you separate them with a pipe. Files. Noah's count on Stack Overflow. Dialog filter. CSV files. Oh, we're doing it in the same argument. I'm just going to copy this. Is this VBA? This is C#. Let's find one in VBA. Excel, VBA. Oh, good, I can sign up. Good news, 25% off. That's Experts Exchange. First time I started using Experts Exchange, we didn't have the hyphen. There was no hyphen here. So I was always wondering if it was Experts Exchange or if it was Expert Sex Change. I was never quite sure. I was kind of hesitant of getting advice from that site. must have had other comments because they put the hyphen in about 10 years ago. Oh, it looks like it's separated with semicolons here. Okay, let's give that a go. So XLSX, semicolon, star dot XLSM, semicolon, star dot XLSB. And then we can give it a position. As we're adding this filter in, there could be a whole list of other filters that we're building up here. Where do we want it to go? I'm going to default that. Since I cleared it out, there's only one place for it to go. Let's go ahead and run that, and we're going to cross my fingers that we got that right. So it shows up here correctly. And let me come into my downloads where I should have some of each of these. And I'm seeing XLSM. That's great news. I'm not entirely sure I have an XLSX file here at all. Oh yeah, ISBN XLSX. So that looks good. It looks like that filter is doing the trick. Because I cleared off the existing filter, there's no way for the user to go back here and say, just pick a filter that says all files. But I think they could come here and say, I want star.star. They could just put a filter here, and that will, they can put in kind of other filters here, even though it's not one that you've given them. So it looks like semicolons was the way that we separate the different filters that we want to put, or the different file masks we want to put onto a single filter. If we wanted to, we could just also put in here CSV. And then you would see that we now got both of those to choose from. And we don't have any CSV files. I think under CRIME, these are Excel files too, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit about configuring this thing to do what we want it to do. Let's make one more configuration, since after all, this is called get files. We want to allow them to choose more than one file. I think right now, I think the default is that to not allow multi-select. Let's just take a look. If I choose this one, oh, it looks like I can do multiple ones to start with. So, but let's at least see how to set it so that we can decide if we want to. So we have just something called allow multi. Allow multi-select. So fd.allow multi-select equals true. That appears to be the default, but if you want it to only be single, you could set that to false. All right, so what do we want to do? Do we want to return a collection? Do we want to return a comma-separated list, comma-separated string? Or do you want to return an array? Probably other ways we can do it that make sense, but those are kind of the ones that pop to my mind. Anyone care? Do you want to do the fastest one? Yeah, let's do the fastest one. Who knows, you might get out 3 minutes early. All right, then why don't we have this return as a collection? So if they clicked OK, then we are going to say set get files equal to fd.selected items. I think we can do that. Let's actually call this from another subprocedure that we test and just make sure that that works. Sub my Acme tester, my Acme code tester. So let me dim files as a collection. Let me set files equal to get files. Let me dim x as an integer. For x equals 1, 2, files.count. Whoops, I want files. Debug.print. files sub x. Next. Now, we have not yet tried to figure out what to do if the user presses cancel. And I'm not entirely certain what's going to be returned when the user presses cancel. My guess is it's going to be nothing. It'll be the nothing object. But let's go ahead and play with that. Let's test this, though, by actually choosing something. So I'll choose some set of files here. What have I done here? 3, 6, 8 files. Set get files of the collection equal to fd.selected items. I know we could push them into this one at a time. So that must not just be a regular collection. So let's just go ahead and populate this into our own collection. So I'll come in here, let me dim C. Come on, caps lock. Dim C as a new collection. What does the new keyword do? In addition to actually creating the object variable, it also, have we worked with collections yet in class through code? So this is, so far, most of the time we've used object variables, we have bound on to existing objects. Here, a collection, and we've worked with properties that are collections, but we can make our own collections from scratch. It's just a little object that I can add items into it. And so normally when I declare a variable as some kind of object variable, as some kind of object, it just allocates enough memory for the, to hold a reference to that object. But if I say new, it actually creates one of those objects and binds the variable onto it at the same time. So this will actually create a collection object in memory and bind the variable C onto it. So let me just say, I'll also declare X here, dim X as integer. Now I keep hitting that caps lock. I'll just slide my keyboard over a bit. Put a for loop here for X equals 1, 2, selected items dot count. And then we will add into our collection c.add fd.selected items sub x. So first time through x will be 1. You'll add the first one, then the second one, then the third one for as many items as there are. Then we should be able to set get files equal to our collection. I'm going to run that, make sure it works, and I'll come back to the code. Selected items dot count. Take a few of these. And it didn't have an error, but maybe I didn't run the right one. Okay, and that's working all the way through. So we declared a new collection. We are then going through the selected items one at a time. We're calling the add method of that new collection, and we're adding those items in one at a time. We're then binding the function onto that collection that we created, and that then, when we call it from up here, set it to get files, we are now going to bind on the files variable to whatever collection this returns. We'll now iterate across that one and print it out. So we've kind of isolated that whole functionality to get a collection into the function, but now we can just use that collection when it comes back. If we haven't seen collections before, there's a lot of new stuff here. And it's really not critical for anything that we're going to be relying on for projects or assignments. So I'm kind of leave this here on the video. And if it's something that you want to spend some more time on, if you're feeling a little shaky with this, that's okay. If you want to spend some more time with it, you can come and take a look at it on the video. But any kind of quick questions about it? Even if your code's not working, we'll be able to go forward. The error was that I did not have count here. So I'm here trying to make X go from 1 to how many selected items there are. And I forgot to put the .count property here. I do want to spend the bulk of the remainder of the class getting going on the database project. So here's a thought on the database project. Did I tell you about my experience with the FBI? No, not at all. So one day, it must have been about 15 years ago. There's lots of data readily available on the internet now, lots of interesting data sets. You can just go and find whatever you want to make examples. But 15 years ago, it was a little harder to come by. And so I came across some really interesting data from the FBI. And it was, it's their crimes known to law enforcement data set. And they have a specific segment that's just about crimes committed on university campuses. And I thought this would be, kind of relevant to, my students here. And so I'd like to get that data set. But it was like, here's some sample data, but if you want the whole data set, send an email to this guy, at fbi.gov or whatever his email address was. Not okay, well, I'll send an email. Professor Allen from Brigham Young University, I'd like to do an example of this data set. Can you send it to me? And I think I got a response back saying, yeah, we'll send it to you. Allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery or something. And yeah, like a month later, a CD shows up. It says FBI on the outside. Oh, my data has arrived. And I looked at it. This is great. This is just great data. About a week later, I got a call. And I have a little caller ID display on my phone in my office, and it says Federal Bureau of Investigation. Listen, I live a really boring life. And still, when the FBI called me, there was like, my stomach kind of turned a little bit. Maybe turned is the wrong word. I had these little butterflies, and I thought, oh no, what have I start wondering, have I done something illegal? And I thought, maybe I should let it go to voicemail. But I said, they probably aren't going to go away. So I answered, hello, this is Dr. Allen. And they said, oh, Dr. Allen, so glad I got a hold of you. Did we send you a data set? I said, yes, I received it just not long ago. It was, beautiful, came, wonderful. There's a nice little CD here. Oh, thank goodness. Do you still have the disk? I said, yes, I do. Wonderful. That was our original. Could you send that back to us? See, that's the FBI at work for you there. Oh, I think I just recorded that, and I'm going to post it on YouTube. I hope they don't come after me. Anyway, so yeah, they must have had an intern working there or something. Professor Allen needs this data. Send it to him straight away, but forgot to mention you should make a copy of it and keep, I was more than happy to send him back the disk. Anyway, that's the data then, some of the data that we're working with today in this crime data. Let's just go ahead and open up one of these and take a look. Why don't we look at Utah? Down here somewhere should be utah.xlsx. And this is the way that the FBI publishes this data. If you are like interested in data, like you're thinking, I want to do some analysis on this data, you look at this data and you think, what? Yeah, this was meant to be printed and read, but it wasn't really meant to be consumed. And so the project that you're going to do for your database project is you are going to read all 50 of these files. I think it's like only 48. I'm not sure why we don't have 2. Maybe there's no universities in, I have to look. Is there West Virginia? I don't know. What state wouldn't have a university that has crime in it? I don't know. Now I'm wondering. West Virginia is there. What did you say? North Dakota? North Dakota's there? Well, someone can figure out what 2 are missing because there's only 48 here. Anyway, to go through these files, and then really what you'll have to do is you'll have to kind of pull this data out and put it into a format that makes a little more sense for data analysis. So that we could say, I want to do a query. Show me all of the, all of the states that had arson. You know, or all the universities that had arson. By the way, when we compare ourselves between, oh, we may not see it just on this one, but oh, BYU is not even on this one, which means that for 2011, there were no crimes known to law enforcement on BYU campus. Does that mean there were no crimes on BYU campus? No, it means whatever happened somehow did not get reported up to the FBI. Since we have our own police department here, my guess is they just failed to report. I don't know what they were afraid of, but they didn't report. So no arson. I was a little disappointed when there's no arson at all, but no arson. Okay, so that's where we're headed with this project. But today we're just going to see how would we kind of open those up and iterate across all those files. You know, how do I get to a folder and then like process every one of those files? So we're going to build the structure that will let you get going on that project today. All right, so why don't we just come to the top? See, I'm going to leave my, I'll call this Acme Code Tester 1. I'll probably want another Acme Code Tester. And why don't we make one called Process All, Process All Files. Process All Files. I'm going to go back to camel case. Process All Files. All right. Now, I think in the project, I'm giving you kind of a fixed place to look for the files, but since we're working with the file dialog, let's go ahead and start off with picking the place. So someone help me out here. I'll get us started. Dim folder path as a string. Now, how can I very easily just let the user choose a folder path based on what I've got here so far? What would I type right here? Folder path equals okay, so if I do application.file dialog, I'm kind of building this thing up again. I've already got this thing built and working great. Yeah, that's the whole reason I wrote this function, is so I could just say anytime I want to, I can just say get folder path, and it'll handle all the file dialog stuff for me. So folder path equals get folder path. Now some people would like to put even though they're not necessary, like to put the parentheses on there to show that's a call to a function. It works just fine without them. And so now how about just debug.print folder path. So now process all files. And that should just, let me pick a folder path. I'll choose crime. I'll say OK. And it gives me the path to the crime folder. So far, so good. By the way, anyone doing this on Mac, native Mac OS? You're using Windows? Anyone else? I was just hoping to see. I'm pretty sure that the MSO file dialog works there too, but I'm not positive. Okay, but this next stuff does work whether you're on Mac or Windows. So now that I have a path, I need to be able to, what I want to do is I want to go through all the XLSX files that are in this path. If I've got some XLSMs in there and I've got some text files, I just want to skip by those. Just give me all the XLSX files. In fact, maybe just for a little more exercise working with a collection, we're going to go ahead and put them into a collection. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a new collection. Here I'll dim files as a new collection. And then I'm also going to dim file name. You'll see why. Dim file name as a string. All right, armed with this path, I want to see how can I get all the XLSM files that are in that folder. Now, if you go online to see this, the vast majority of the examples you will see will use something called the Microsoft scripting object. So it's going to say, look, make a new object, make a new instance of the Microsoft scripting object, and use all of this stuff. But that definitely works only in Windows. And there's actually code built in native to VBA to manipulate these folders just as well. Well, truth is, the Microsoft scripting object does have some other niceties to it, but for our purposes, the stuff that's part of VBA will work just fine. But to really understand this, we had to set the Wayback Machine to the early 1980s. Computers, this was before we had graphical interface, even all Apple computers, no graphical user interface, everything was just character-based. So you don't have to do this along with me, you can if you want. I'm just gonna hit the command. Oh, I think they've disabled it on this computer. Shoot. CMD. I want to run the command prompt. Command prompt has been disabled by my administrator. Fiddlesticks. Yours would work, CMD. Let me try PowerShell. PowerShell is a more powerful version. And it has not been disabled by my administrator. Of all the ones that should be disabled, it's this one. But let me see. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Font 28, great. I mean, that used to be what our computers looked like. I mean, not even the bar at the top. It was just, here you go. You want something, you got to type it in. And so the first thing you ever learned how to do was type a directory, dir, and it would give you a listing of whatever folders or files you have in that folder. And so, let's see, where am I? GLN2, let me go to my downloads. And then we go to, CD is for change directory. Let me go, what is it called, crime? Give me a directory listing, there they are. These are all the files that I'm interested in. So that's what the dir does just as a part of the operating system. I mean, back in the day, it was a part of DOS. Disk operating system was what it was called. And that was just a fundamental statement that if you ever used a computer, you knew dir because that's how you'd know, what was around for you to use. Okay, so that statement comes here in VBA, dir. And then I tell it, in parentheses, I tell it where do I want it to look? Well, I want it to look right here. And then I tell it, as a part of this first argument, I give it some kind of filter. star.xlsx. And that should give me back one file. You would think somehow that would return some kind of collection object, but this statement, dir, has been a part of BASIC since the very beginning. Since the when was the first BASIC? When did Bill Gates, by the way, of all the things that Bill Gates didn't do, and when he's in charge of Microsoft, he did write their BASIC compiler. When did Bill Gates die? Is he dead? I don't think so. When did Bill Gates write the BASIC compiler? (1975). So, so this statement has been a part of the BASIC language since 1975. It's been around for a long, extra long time, before the idea of objects was here. So here's what they said. They said, listen, you just give dir and you tell it the directory to be on, and it will bring back the first one that meets the criteria that you specified. Then you call it again without anything, it'll bring you the next one. And then it'll bring you the next one. So you can call this repeatedly, and it will just keep bringing you back the next one off the list. It's a little bit different than we're used to working with because it's a really old statement. And eventually we'll get to the end. What do you think it will return when there's nothing left? Thank goodness it doesn't go back and give you the first one again. It doesn't do that. Any other thoughts? It'll take us a long time to get there. I'll wait while you guess. I mean, I'll keep trying to get there until you guess it right. Yeah, empty string, that's right. But I would like to get there now. We're getting close. Washington, West Virginia. Is Wyoming the last one? Empty string. So that's how you can tell that it's over, empty string. If I try it again, error. So I got that one shot to look for an empty string, otherwise it'll give me an error. Okay, so here, where am I? here I've got my folder path. So now what I want to do is I want to say file name equals dir of my folder path. Concatenated with, oh, what did it, now it did not bring back a trailing slash on the end, so I'm going to add here a slash. Oh, actually, what I'm going to do? That path separator is a backslash in Windows. What is it in Mac? The / in Mac. Fortunately, the good folks in Redmond, Washington have anticipated that you might not know which operating system this is going to run on. Application.path separator. It will tell you the path separator for your current environment. So I'm going to go ahead and use that instead of hard coding a backslash, which would make that Windows specific code. I'll put the path separator in there, and then I will say I want star.xlsx. That's the kind of files I'm looking for. And if I've got txt files in there, they will never come into the list. I'll keep saying dir, 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 and it will only give me whatever met the criterion that I specified when I opened the first called the directory state. So now I've got a collection. Let me just load these up into the collection with a little do loop. Do while, oh, do this, do until file name equals a 0-length string. And what am I going to do? I'm just going to say files, which is the name of my collection, files.add. Now here, I think I would like not just the file name. That's what it gave me back, the file names. But I would like the full path to that file to be put into this collection. So I'm going to do my folder path and my application path separator. And the file name. Should we go ahead and print those off as well? We'll load them up, and we'll have another loop that prints them off. Dim x as an integer for x equals 1 to files.count debug.print file sub x. All right, so that should spool off not just the file names, but it should spool off the full path to those files, because I first collected the path to where these folders are, and I used that path to get the files that I'm after. So I will clear off my immediate window, run my sub procedure. Well, how do you end a do loop? Not with next, with loop. I'll pick crime. Sounds like my mother would not be pleased to chose a life of crime. Something didn't like something about that, or is it still going? I made an endless loop, and there's no do events. Curses. Has anyone not run that? Like you have it and haven't run it? You followed along really well? Will you email it to me real quick? Just copy the code out, put it in email, and send it off to me. Until file name, am I doing anything to change file name here? Do until file name is blank. Have I done anything to change file name? No, how do I get the next file name? I called dir without any arguments, and I neglected to do that. I'll try to break into this, but I'm not hopeful. Yeah, just all the code that you have there will be fine. Yeah, I'll try control break over here. Oh, where's break? Here's control break. Yeah, and the problem is it's processing this so fast that it just doesn't have time to look at it. Anyone else? Did anyone else do this with me? And you're already locked up? Raise your hand if you're locked up there right now. All right, I'll post this on Learning Street real quick so we can continue on. Yeah, I mean, Control Shift Escape. I can't even get to my task manager. Close all windows. Restart the program. I can pick it pretty quickly as long as you didn't have to go too far. Here comes Excel. You know, it might recover some of it. Enable content, auto record. Let's see how much it got. Alt F11. Process all files. I missed a whole bunch. Have you sent it to me already? Yeah. Oh, did you send it to my BYU address? Because it might take a while to get through there. Uh-oh. I just realized I'm publishing my email address on YouTube. Well, since I have like 3 followers, I guess I'm not too worried. So. Oh, maybe I'm not. Waiting for cache. What's with this? Maybe it'll be here. Just govallen@gmail.com. G-O-V-E. Never mind, it's here. It's good. We're good. Okay, so this is. Oh, this is everything. Okay, great. You go to Learning Suite, and I guess I'm going to put this in content. Create a page, title, VBA, or process files. Partway. Save and publish. All right, that should be available to you now. I'm just going to pick up process all files. So a little further than I am. Do until file name is this. We're going to, oh, you had do events. Look at you, good for you. And I'm going to put in here file name equals dir. And that'll pull the next one. So then it should get that blank one. So you said, did you miss anything from this particular? Oh, I had a for loop down here. Dim x as integer, just to print them off. For x equals 1 to files dot count. Next, debug.print, files sub x. I'll save. You gotta do events on my do loop. I'm not too worried about my for loop. It's a little tougher to get to run away from me. And we'll run that. We're gonna pick downloads, crime. There we go. So now I think I've got a different debug.print that's doing that. Yeah, we're putting the folder path out here. So that's where this one comes from. And then the rest of these are all of those crime files. All right. So far, so good. Now, it turns out that it's actually a pretty good idea to kind of isolate your use of dir to just a really short area. So I could just say, you know, file name equals dir, and then immediately use that to run off to some other process to actually go and process that file. There'd be quite a bit of processing you have to do on each one of these files. So I could just run off and do that, but the longer I have in between subsequent calls to my dir, the more likely it is that some other part of VBA is going to make another dir call to a different folder. And if you accidentally say, oh, you know, I need to do some dir here, that will blow away the other list. You only get one dir list. And so this is a really good idea. What we did here is just to say, let me just blow through the list, set it aside into a collection, and then process that collection. Don't have to do that, but it's a really healthy idea. Oh, yeah. So the question is, can you use dir on Mac? And the answer is, yeah, dir is a valid statement in Mac OS, but that doesn't matter because it's a VBA statement. And VBA knows how to fetch back a list of file names for a directory. But yeah, you still can use dir. Oh, did you just try it right now? Yeah. Doesn't work? Maybe it doesn't work. Yeah, so ls would be a list. But it's, yeah, it's the same thing. I'm trying to think of the environment that I'm in where I can use both of them. I'm not sure what it is. It might be PowerShell. Okay. Okay, 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and kind of do the next major step of this project. So let me go ahead and make another sub procedure called process1 file. And this is going to take a path of the file that it wants to process. So what I'd like to do here is I would like to open this file up. I'd like to look at it, and then I'd like, maybe print something off from it, and then close it. So here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to declare a workbook variable, WB, as a workbook. So I don't think we've used a workbook variable since like the second week of class, maybe the third week of class when we kind of got introduced to them. But here's where we're going to use them now. And I will say set WB equal to workbooks, my workbooks collection, dot open, and I'll give it the file path. That should open that workbook. So I guess it'll be Alabama because I'm going to actually call process1 file. I'm going to print the file off, and then right after I print it, I'll say process1 file, and I'm going to pass it file sub x. So it's a full path now, right? So it's wherever I found that file, and then the file name. So it should send Alabama down here. Now I'm going to do something with it, but before I forget, I am going to say WB dot close. I want to close it, make sure I close it. I don't want to open up 50 workbooks. It used to be that if you tried to open up 50 workbooks in one copy of Excel, you would crash Excel. I think now on most of your computers, you could open up 50 different workbooks, but you don't need them open up at once. So the idea is I've got some process over here that says, okay, I've got a set of files. I got to work through these files. Now, one file at a time, I'm going to go and process it. So here, I'm processing a single file. So I'm opening the workbook. I'll do something with it, and then I'm going to close it. And I guess what I'll do is I'll just print what's in. Where do they have to look to find out if it actually has different campuses? Is it B5? Could you possibly remember that? I think it's B5. Let's look at B5. Okay, I'm just going to print WB dot range B5 dot value. One of the difficulties in working with this data is that some campuses or some colleges have multiple campuses. Like Texas A&M's got a dozen different campuses. Does BYU have different campuses? We don't. So there are 3 different universities, right? They are not campuses of the same university. What's that? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a different campus. We certainly don't treat it like a different campus here. So like where I got my degree, University of Minnesota has a Minneapolis campus, has a St. Paul campus. Anyway, if your state has no schools that report their data campus by campus, then the whole column of campuses is just gone. Makes it a little more difficult because you're not even quite sure where the data is going to be unless you know if there's a campus column or not. And I think B5 is where the campus column is. It is B5? So when you look at B5, you go, does it say campus here or not? And if it says campus, you know how to behave. If it doesn't say campus, you know you've got to do some changes to the file. Oh, by the way, when we close this, we have a save changes parameter here, and I'm going to say false because nothing that I'm doing when I process this workbook, I don't want to change my source data at all. I want to open the source data. Maybe I want to make some changes on the workbook to make it easier for me to work with, but when I close it, I don't want to change the underlying data. So by saying close false here, that will close the workbook without saving the changes. I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint on my next. I'll go ahead and run this code. Other than support this property or method. Oh, I got to get to a particular sheet. I can't just say, I'm saying workbook.range. Workbooks don't have ranges. What have ranges? Worksheets have ranges. So worksheets, sub 1. There's only one worksheet in these workbooks. So worksheets sub 1 dot, great. I'm going to go ahead and clear off my immediate window and then continue running from here. Just press F5 again. Yeah, so that one said campus. I'll run the next one. That one says campus. So Alabama has campuses. At least one school in Alaska has campuses. At least one school in Arizona has campuses. Looks like they most have campuses. So Delaware does not either. So Delaware, instead of campus, it says student enrollment. It actually says student enrollment 1. And so that would be one that we have to process differently. So this is really a pretty good structure for that project. Now, one difference is here that you don't pick the path. I just tell you where to go for the path. It's supposed to be at a location relative to where the workbook is. But you'll figure that out without too much trouble. But now, process one file, here you just need to do kind of what needs to be done file by file to pull the data out and put it somewhere that you could work with it. So that's pretty good. We've got like 4 minutes. Even with our crash, we've got like 4 minutes. And I don't have anything else to say. But I would be glad to answer questions if there's any questions. If not, class dismissed.